We are delighted to have Coach Courtney and Coach Joni here today from the University of Georgia. Oconee State Bank has a really strong partnership with the University of Georgia. One of the things that we do among many is the Georgia Way program, and we actually right now have 2 interns on the swim team with us, and we wanted them to be here today, but unfortunately I think it's Tuesdays and Thursdays or something are their days that they can be here. Otherwise they have class and such. And but we partner with University of Georgia in many areas, and we're excited about today. I think you'll get a lot out of it, and you're in for a real treat. I've heard both of these women speak in the past. At the end, and Josh may talk about this more, but we'll have an opportunity to take some photographs and such over here, and they'll hang around a few minutes afterwards in the event that we don't get through all of our questions. So thank you all for being here, and at this point I will turn it over to Josh to sort of introduce the event and take us forward. All you, Josh.
Thanks, Neil. Thank you so much to everybody for joining us this morning. We're really excited about this. As Neil stated, this is the second of our speaker series, so we'll have a couple more coming this year, and we're very excited about having Glenn Jackson and John Coleman join us for those sessions. So we have those booked, and we're excited about that. We're excited to start this initiative this year because it does give us an opportunity to give back to our community members who give so much and make this such a great place to live and work, and just really one of the best places to want to go. So thank you all for helping to develop our youth and make that future a little brighter. And I know after a long season and then a long school year, sometimes having to get up a little early in the morning and come in on your summer break can be a little tough, but hopefully it's not too bad and we'll make it worth your while this morning. I know most of us are counting out for those summer vacations, right? But we do thank you for the efforts that y'all put in, and educating can be such a challenge, and y'all strive to meet that challenge every day and better the lives of your students, not just athletically, but also academically and personally, and that is a challenge that y'all meet head on. For that, thank you. We want to say thank you to Coach Joni and Coach Courtney for taking time out of their day to meet with us and really give us some of those insights and some knowledge there. And Neil always refers to it as saw sharpening time, I think. And that's a great way to describe it because it's all about honing our skills, bettering ourselves, and taking that back to our teams and really learning ways to help them grow and do more with the tools we have. So we want to introduce, we have Caleb Stevens will be our moderator this morning. Caleb is a 2016 UGA graduate from Terry College of Business. And while he was there, he helped create a podcast for the business school. He also helped launch a Faith and Work conference and was a commencement speaker for graduation. So he had some awesome stuff there on the resume. He is currently relationship director at Corners Outreach in Atlanta, and will be transitioning to a business development role with Center State Bank. And he'll be there starting in August? September. Okay, I'm not wrong, but we get there eventually. Coach Courtney has been with UGA, I think, for 1 year. She started May 2017, so 2 years. So a little lot. I can't do math. We'll do this some banker, right? I'm a culture officer. I don't deal with it. But that was about 9 years after she completed the most illustrious NCAA gymnastics career. And she was also an Olympic athlete and had a bronze on the uneven bars, individual bronze, and was also part of a team silver medal. So she did some fantastic stuff for Team USA, right? Coach Joni I think she played for Alabama for 4 years. Did 4 years. And then started coaching shortly after that and was part of Andy Lander's staff at the University of Georgia for 4 years prior to taking over as the head coach. And I think we have how many All-SEC? Five All-SEC honorees that she's had during her tenure at UGA. And they've made the NCAA tournament twice in those 4 years. So we're very excited to have both Jim and Caleb here with us this morning. So please give them a round of applause.
All right, well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for being here this morning. It's such an honor to have Coach Taylor and Coach Kupets Carter. And the way this is going to work is I'll kind of tee us up with a few questions for them, but this is an all-inclusive morning, and so we're going to pass it to you guys, and we'll have a runner with a mic. Is that right, Dad? And we'd love to open up the floor. We'd love to open up the floor as well and have you guys participate because it's just an honor to have these two wonderful coaches here and to get to learn from them and just soak in their wisdom. When it comes to gymnastics, I remember, I think I was in 9th grade, maybe 10th grade, and I remember going to my first ever Gym Dogs event, and you were one of the athletes on the floor, and so it's really cool to kind of come full circle. And for me, I was particularly in amazement because I don't have many role models in my life when it comes to flexibility. My dad can't even, like, it's not that he can't touch his toes, like, he can't make his legs straight. Like, when he sits down, his legs, he can't even, like, put them on the floor. And so my mind was blown when I went to a gym doctor, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is crazy. And so that was a really cool moment for me because it stuck out, and just the flexibility. My dad's a great athlete, but when it comes to flexibility, that's not his thing. And so really amazing what y'all do as Gym Dogs. And Coach Taylor, I have to ask you, when Georgia and Alabama play past couple matches, is there a little bit of heart tug? What's that like for you as you're sort of wrestling with your current institution, but your alma mater?
Go Dogs.
Hey! Right answer. Well, I'd love to kick it off first. Just tell us a little bit briefly, kind of the 30,000 foot view of your background, kind of how you got here, why you got into your respective sports. Joni, if you'd like to kick us off.
I am from Meridian, Mississippi. Started playing basketball at a really young age. Had no idea that you could get a scholarship and have a free education by playing basketball. And one of my dad's family friends, my dad's from Louisiana. One of his family friends was sending his daughter through. She was driving to Tuskegee, Alabama, and going to school. And he was kind of telling me and my brother, hey, you know, a friend of the family is going to spend the night tonight. She's splitting up her drive and stopping at our house before she gets to Tuskegee. And I was like, what is she going there for? And he said to play basketball. And I was like, and so when she came, I kind of was talking to her, and she goes, yeah, it's free. And I was like, do what? Just never knew that. And so I already loved basketball, and maybe that was 5th, 6th grade, and not really planting a seed for me, like, this is going to be a way for me to open doors that might not, you know, otherwise be opened. And so I really became very serious and honed in on my skills, and obviously had a chance to play at the college level. I was going to be a high school teacher and counselor. I got my degree in secondary education, and I wanted to be a counselor and then do Christian counseling on the weekend. And then my 5th year at Alabama, so because I had to do student teaching, they don't allow you to student teach and play at the same time, so I had a 5th year. In my 5th year, I was student teaching, and Mark Godfrey, who was the men's coach at the time, he asked me would I work in his office, and I did as a student assistant, and the rest is history. I caught the bug. That was also the year of 9/11. And I can remember, obviously, as all of us can, watching that happen. And then he called me and he said, I'm driving back from the Birmingham airport. All of my flights have been canceled indefinitely. But it's a heavy recruiting period in September. You leave on like the 10th or 9th or 10th, and you are gone the entire month of September. That's the only time in the fall you can actually go into the home of student athletes and visit with them and kind of get a feel for where they are. And he said, it's a 45-minute drive from Birmingham to Tuscaloosa. And he goes, when I get back, I need you to have mapped out how I'm going to get all these places by train, by bus, by whatever, by car. Okay. So, you know, we're all still in awe and in shock and just in deep sadness about what has happened, but you have to kind of compartmentalize and move on. And so just being able to be behind the scenes and kind of see all the things that coaches do. I thought coaches came to practice and wore cool Nike gear, right? That's what I thought my coaches did. But to be able to be behind the scenes and see how they affect lives and just the different pieces and moving parts to it, I caught the bug and was fortunate enough to get a coaching job right out of, after graduating. I went to Troy University and coached there for 3 years, and then I was at Louisiana Tech for 3 years, and I'm not sure how many of you know the name Leon Barmore, but he was a really, really big women's basketball coach back in the day. I mean, in the same breath as the Pat Summits and Joni Conrads. And he wasn't the coach there, but he still lived in town and came to practice and became a great mentor for me. So to be able to just learn under him, and then from there I went back to Alabama for 2 years to coach, LSU for one, and I've been at Georgia. This will start season 9 at the University of Georgia. So this is year 18 for me coaching, and my 5th year as head coach, and it is definitely my life's work. There's no doubt that basketball is my way in to affect change in a positive way in the lives of young women. I love everything about recruiting, coaching, the X's and O's. It's my passion, but I know that that's God's way of allowing me into the lives of young women to affect change.
Awesome, thank you.
It's fun to hear the different paths because a lot of it, there are some similarities, but I was born in Texas, moved to Northern Virginia, and trained in Maryland for my elite career, as we call it, in gymnastics, and went to the Olympics in 2004 when I was 18, my junior year in high school. And so at that point, gymnastics was everything. It was a job. And you'd love it. I got injured, actually. I tore my Achilles tendon the year prior to the Olympic Games. And so prior, back in the day, it used to be a career-ending injury. And so I had about 6 months, and it was back to doing gymnastics. And a couple things that taught me a lot through that time and just who I am is, one, that I did love the sport. It was so hard. It was so much work. And so taking a step back and being told I can't do it, and I have to work my way back up, I realized through that time I wanted to be out there. I loved the sport. So all that, the fear, the anxiety of going to the gym sometimes, the I don't want to do it, the drag, that was gone right the year before the Olympics. And so I look at that, and it gave me a blessing, honestly, because if I hadn't have torn my Achilles, I might have been burnt out by the time the Olympics came. But instead, I was rejuvenated. I was ready to go. I gave myself 3 days after my injury to be negative, to be upset. Why did this happen to me? Blah, blah, blah. Because I was told by a teammate who had the same injury, your attitude affects it a lot. If you were negative, your therapy isn't going to get there. But if you're positive and you keep pushing, you have small little goals. So just to be able to lift my heel off of the floor was a big deal to me. I made that really a special moment in my path toward going to the Olympics and trying. And prior to that, I actually never said I was going to go to the Olympics. When you think of gymnastics, all you think of is the Olympics. And so I was a very stubborn child. And so whenever anyone would ask me that from the age of 8, no, I'm not. And so then I didn't really make that important to myself until after that Achilles, when I actually had the chance to. And I told myself, no, this is why I'm doing gymnastics. This is what my goal is, and I'm going to go for it. I happened to make it through. And so that's such a tiny moment. There's so many gymnasts that are talented enough. They have the right drive, they have the right coaches, they have everything, but timing is huge in gymnastics with it coming every 4 years. Is it your time? Is it not? Injuries. And so it just happened to be my time, and it was absolutely fantastic. And like you said, we got a silver medal, so it's kind of, yeah, you went to the Olympics, you got a silver medal, but you're going for the gold. You're going for that, and we had a shot at it. And so at first we had to look at our coaches being 18, not really understanding. Are we happy? Are we sad? What are you thinking? And they looked at us, after the shock of disappointment. It's like, no, you've earned this. The flag is going to raise for you guys, and go stand up there and be proud. And so that taught me a lot too, in just life and reaching for goals and having really high standards and high goals and going for them and saying what they are and really making sure you're clear with yourself on this is what I want to accomplish. But if you don't accomplish it, it's not the end of the world. It's not the biggest deal. What did you learn from it? In our team right now, we talked a lot about there is no failure. It's just partial success. The success is what you've done to that point to get to where you want to go. And so taking all that forward, I go to college and gymnastics becomes a joy. I turn it around and it becomes something. It's the last 4 years of when you get to do the sport that you've done your entire life since you were 3. That's all you really know. School on the side, but it's been gymnastics. It's your passion. It's your love for a lot of gymnasts. And so college gave me the love. And I realized my 5th year, I actually got to be a student coach my 5th year after our team, and realized if I was going to be a coach in gymnastics, it was going to be at the college level. I loved the fun aspect. You still had pressure. It was still hard. I had gone to the Olympics, and college gymnastics was still scary and hard. And that's what I love the challenge of it. So there was still a challenge for me as an Olympic athlete to come to college. And that's what I try to tell elite athletes. It's still a challenge. It's amazing, but you're part of a team. You learn so much more working with your teammates constantly. And I think that applies a lot to, business. You have to work with each other. It doesn't happen through one person. You can't do your tasks or your events separately. You have to work together. And that's what I love so much about it. And so, getting on track again, I get off track quite a bit, but I graduated with an interior design degree. I loved interior design and loved sports. And so I was trying to figure out which direction I would want to go. I wanted to be an athletic director at that point because my coach in club had told me you can always be a gymnastics coach. But if you get into it, you're never going to get out of it. And so I thought I'd take the opportunity to experience some other avenues that I was interested in. And went to College of Charleston for an internship there with their athletic department, came back to Georgia, got my master's, worked in the compliance athletic department as an intern, and saw that to get to an athletic director, you have to be compliance or fundraising, and I was like, this is not for me. So that kind of led me back to the college route of coaching, and I coached my entire life, not a specific team, but athletes since I was 18 years old after the Olympics. I would coach summer camps and get involved and engaged, and just really found it to be the passion you have for the sport that kept me in it. And so I moved back here a year prior to getting the job at Georgia. My parents lived here. It was time. My husband's from England, actually, and he was an acro gymnast for Great Britain. And so we have a very high tolerance of like, what are we going to do? What's next? Like, just setting those goals, really pushing the boundaries. And came back here, and it was kind of just a chill year. And then without the experience as a college coach, without the years under my belt as a volunteer coach, I became head coach at the University of Georgia, and that was for a very specific reason. You can look at paper all day long and think you're not there. But when you speak to a person and when you engage with that person, they realize I was the right person for this job, and I do believe I am. And so getting past that point, I didn't think they would take me seriously at first. I'm like, you think they'll take me seriously? Like, I don't really, it says 5 years of experience. I can't really check off that box. And so they did. They believed in me and what we were going to do at Georgia, and they have every day since I've been there. And it makes me very proud and excited of them to do something like that, very bold, very outrageous in terms of gymnastics. Everyone kind of stepping up that ladder, and all of a sudden I come in. But it's what I've experienced. It's what I've been through. It's all the departments I've been in. I have what it takes to be the legend, or even greater than Suzanne. We're going to beat the number of championships. She has 10, so I'm going to stay until we go 11. Is the goal. So that's a lot of talk, but that's a lot about me and who I am, and what I'm really passionate about.
Awesome.
Kelly, before you go to your next question, what can we do to fix the static?
Is it me?
Yeah.
Just wiggle it.
While they're fixing that, I will apologize for my coughing and sniffling. I have got the worst cold ever, so you guys bear with me. I'm sorry.
No
You
worries.
gotta tell me this now.
We're good. Talking then about the carryover from being an athlete to being a coach. In what ways does that translate? Obviously, you have the perspective of an athlete, but you're also transitioning into a leadership role. You're becoming a mentor to student athletes. There's a lot that is new and fresh and probably intimidating. What is that transition like? In what ways did an athlete prepare you to be a coach? And then what were some things that maybe you didn't see coming that we as leaders, as we're transitioning and moving into leadership roles, maybe can pay attention to and be aware of?
I think for me, and I'm sure Courtney will have some of the same things, as an athlete, Courtney is definitely an elite athlete. She's an Olympian. But as an elite athlete, there's some characteristics that carry over. You're leading your team. You are a leader on your team. You have a responsibility, time management. You know how to get things done in a short amount of time. You know how to push through pain, push through being sleepy, tired, all those things. And so when you transition into being a coach, head coach especially, some of that comes with you. During the season, I probably sleep 4 hours because you are at work all day, and then when you go home, you've got your family, and then when they go to sleep, I watch film. A lot of people watch film at work. I don't. I can't watch film at work because the players are constantly coming in and out, and if they want my time, I'm going to give it to them. And then you're practicing. And the one thing that you learn when you have any leadership role is at any point, someone can walk in your office and knock on your door, and all hell breaks loose. anything can happen. You're not in control of your day. And that was the one thing that was different. As a college athlete, I knew my day. It was planned out. I was going to get up, I was going to go to breakfast, I was going to go to class, I was going to go work out, then I was going to go to study hall, then I might go back to the gym, and I was going to go to bed, and I was going to wake up and do it all again the next day. When you take on any type of leadership role, you have no control of your day. Because if you are responsible for something, then somebody's going to come knock on your door and say, we have a problem, or this is happening, or so-and-so just stopped by and you need to give them 15 minutes of your time. So it becomes really important to plan out and to get things done when you're at home in those hours, wee hours in the morning, wee hours in the night, whatever's best for you. You have to figure out the system that works for you. Because what I found is that once I get to the office, I'm not in control of what happens. I think I am, and I have a plan. Hardly ever does it go that way. Because, you know, being so close to Atlanta and having so much talent there, kids just walk up, you know, and they want a tour, or hey, I was coach, I was closed and we were driving through and we wanted to stop by. Well, hey, come sit down. Or my mom is sick or something happened and you have to, you know, give some time to one of your student athletes. So learning how to still get things done, but not being in control of your day was one of the things that I would say changed from being a student athlete to being a head coach. And then the biggest thing is managing people. You can have, Courtney talked about timing, you can have all the knowledge, you can have all the expertise, you can have all the talent. If you do not know how to manage people, then you're going to have a hard time in a leadership role. You've got to really pour into yourself to learn how to do that. It's about managing people and being an effective communicator and having just compassion. I think those are the things that were different for me from being a college athlete to stepping into that role.
She's right about that. Your day takes on a mind of its own, but I am bound and determined, actually, so I'm going into my third year, to minimize that as much as possible. It will always happen, and she's right. Looking at the times that I can set aside, like, I need to buffer in some time here because something's going to happen. But taking a little bit more control. I couldn't just sleep 4 hours a day. I need more sleep than that. So I plan out my day a little bit differently and getting things done. But as an athlete coming in, she's right. It does come with you. All of the things. The reason you're a coach is because you're passionate. You've got all the inner inside of the sport and all those characteristics. That's why they like to hire athletes. That's why businesses do. I mean, there's a lot of good characteristics that comes with being an athlete, and just everything you learn. But the couple things that I've currently learned and been continuing to improve on is being open. I have my ideas, I have the ways I think I want to do it, but I'm like a sponge. I want to absorb what you think. I want to know if it's completely opposite than me, why do you think that? Because you know what, if I think that's opposite, let's get into the middle somewhere, and that could possibly be the best thing we could use to get to the right point. My opinions, my thoughts aren't always the right way to go. And now, as a head coach, you're responsible. The person in charge is responsible for every decision, everything that happens in your program, on your team, with your athletes. If another coach does something, you're responsible for it. And so taking on all that responsibility, you do have to make the decisions. But what I really love, and what I've always thought this way, but being in that leadership role is being open, having everyone have a voice, listening to that voice, because leadership also is about listening. And that's what I've learned. Leaders aren't to tell people what to do, they're about creating new leaders. And so I haven't been in the experience that much with it, but it's been really impactful for me to read that every day on my wall. It's about empowering others to lead. It's not about taking control, it's not about taking charge, it's giving them the characteristics. If you're a good leader, you're going to embody those characteristics. So you write down, well, what do I want to show them? What do I want them to learn? Am I embodying that? Am I showing them that's what you do? And so those are some points that, I have to put those little quotes up on my wall and reminders constantly. And then the other one that's really important to me and something that I've learned is the worst behavior you accept will eventually become your standard. The worst behavior you're willing to accept will eventually become your standard. And that's huge because it is about managing people. It's not about sometimes being their friend. It's not about being mean, but you have to find a middle ground. You have to realize, what do I want this to look like? What do I want this environment and atmosphere to feel like? When I worked in the athletic department in Buttsmere, that was the best working environment I could have ever been around. And I said, I want this to be where I work one day. Not the place, but the people. And it is about managing people. So you have to get to know the people around you. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? Are you listening to them? How are things working? And so it is about managing people more than I ever thought as a coach. Like, I got the gym down. I got the girls down. Like, that's my thing. That's what I love. That's my joy. You know, getting out to the practice, it's like we're not working. We're enjoying ourselves. We're pushing it. We're you know, getting them to the challenges and where they want to be. It's so satisfying to watch an athlete want something and put in the work to get it. It's the best part as a coach. But it's a hard part as a college coach, having to manage the people. I would agree 100%. And that's something that takes time. You have to understand what you want to see, what the environment you want, and you have to take steps to get there. But those are a couple of the quotes that are constantly, and that's why I'm repeating them now, because I repeat them. Am I doing what I want to achieve as a coach?
Say that one more time. The worst behavior you'll accept will eventually become your standard. Great.
Yeah.
Great insight. Any questions from the audience? I want to open it up to you all for a couple questions. Anyone, any thoughts or questions for coaching?
So I know this is probably a little bit of a different question, but on the court, okay, or on when you guys are in the gym, if you're there's highs and lows for your student athletes, okay? So you're going to have meets and you're going to have games where maybe they're experiencing the most successful game of their year, or they're about to experience the worst loss, okay? Is there, what do you say? Is there one statement that you make to your players, your student athletes, regardless of if it's the high or the low? Is there one statement that's your go-to to encourage them or motivate them, or what is that?
For us, it's next play mentality, next day mentality, next play, next play, next play. And that is good because if it's, you know, a lot of times kids are in love with themselves these days, so everything is about what they see on social media and Snapchat. And so if they've had a really good game, if they've scored 20 points and they're walking around, next play, that was yesterday, what are you doing today? That was yesterday, what are you doing today? Next play mentality, next day mentality. And then the other thing, we just try to tell them, because the season is so long, we play 30 games, and it's, you know, let's stay consistent. We don't want to get too high, we don't want to get too low.
I would agree with some of those things. What we do a lot of the times is we want to finish strong is a lot of what we say, because we have 4 rotations, things are going on, you never know what's going to happen. We're with our own team. We can't affect the other teams around us, and so you don't know what's going to happen with them, and if you give up in the moment, then you've taken yourself out. And so it is very difficult, though, with younger athletes and just athletes that don't understand that yet. We're getting there on our team, but to really make sure you finish strong. And it's hard because she's right. It is about, well, everyone just saw that. Well, everyone just thinks I did that. And just trying to get that out of their head. Gymnastics, it's a mental game. It's realizing to try to push that out and put something forward is very difficult to do because some of them might only do one event. So that's the only event they did all day and they're done. So now they're just harping on themselves. And so to get them to really push forward, and so that's why it's not in a moment, it's not one word, it's what we teach them constantly in the gym, what we're trying to push forward. So we try to emulate in their practices as well to get there. But we don't have just one word, it's just the feeling and the environment that we try to create to help them. Because I've noticed this past year, I could say anything, they were done. They weren't listening. They had already made their decision. And so if we can get on the front end of helping them to realize when you're in a situation, what you do to prepare them, then they can do what we're asking of them. But in the moment, it's very difficult, especially with our team this past year, and just the frustration. They want to do well. There's no way that they did it on purpose. And that's what I think we have to realize for them. It's not about getting mad at them or frustrated at them. It's about inspiring them. And what we do, get tougher on them. What do you want to do the next rotation? Or give them a score that we need to hit. Depending on the team, some of them, you have to really know your athletes that you're working with. And so we do it sometimes individually, but sometimes as a group. But it mainly comes from how we prepare them before season.
I remember years ago I was at a conference and I met a guy and asked him what he did. He said, I'm a sports psychologist for golfers. I was like, wow, that's an interesting career path. I've never heard of that. And he said, I basically help coach athletes in the psychology of golf. You hit a bad shot, how do you recover mentally from that? And I remember just as an athlete in high school, I was a kicker in football, and you have one bad kick and you're like done the rest of the game, and it's even, you've set yourself up for failure the rest of the game. So I would guess that's a sign of maturity as you become a more mature athlete. Talk about how you've seen some of your athletes grow, not just in terms of their skill set, but just mentally, kind of the toughness that it takes when maybe you have a bad start to a game, not letting that sort of define the rest of the game or your attitude.
We're in a different situation because we're a team sport. It's so different, golf, tennis, gymnastics. And so we can kind of get them back a little bit quicker because you can go rebound, you can play great defense. There's multiple things you can do, and it's 5 people out there playing together. So we do a lot of team bonding, a lot of team building trips at the beginning of the year to talk about team, and it's about the team. And so we can also sub them in and out too. We can sit them for a second and then get them back out there. Whereas if you're doing a gymnast is doing a beam rotation or a golfer is golfing, you can't sub them out. They've got to figure it out. And so we can kind of sit them for a second and get their mind back right. But it's so interesting to, and I say these kids these days. I mean, I am 40, so I feel like I can say that now. I'm a big Tim Elmore fan. You guys know who Tim Elmore is? He does a lot about millennials and Generation Z and all that stuff, and he compares the millennials to teacups, and Generation Z are snowflakes. So that's what we're teaching and coaching right now. And so right now on my team, I have teacups or I have snowflakes, and teacups are very fragile, and when you fuss at them, they break. And snowflakes are soft, and when you fuss at them, they melt. And that's what we're coaching. They're going to either break or they're going to melt. But if I know that, right, it's my job to know that. And if I know that, now I can help coach that. And we can put them in situations in practice where they melt, and then we correct the behavior and figure out a different way to do it. We have sports psychologists, thank goodness, at the University of Georgia understands how important that is and provides us with several sports psychologists on our campus to help our student athletes. And for us, it's the why. We have our kids write a letter every single year to basketball. Write a letter to basketball. And in that letter, it's so shocking to find out sometimes they hate it, sometimes they're in love with it. It depends on the year. I've read a freshman who was so in love with basketball, and by their senior year, they absolutely hated it. Basketball, I hate you. You've taken away my Christmas, I missed my brother's wedding. And so it goes through phases, and when you can get them back to their why of why they're doing it, then in those moments where they're struggling or they've lost their focus, you can connect with them and get them back on track.
Yeah, it's funny. The one thing from our, linking this back into the conversation we just had, in terms of when something goes wrong, how do you pull them back? And the one thing I forgot to mention was it's so important for that one person who made the mistake. On our team, someone falls. They feel bad, they've let the team down. But it's so important because the other girls don't know how to react to them. It's important for that person who has made the mistake to step in, cheer it on. It's their reaction and their demeanor that actually affects the rest of the team. That's Nathan. That affects the rest of the team. And so we work on really hard to show them your reaction is going to affect, it's body language. You don't think you're presenting something, you are. And that's really big in our sport for just, it's by yourself, but yet you have to count all those scores together for the team. But that's one of the big pieces for me that I just keep talking to them about. We keep trying to find ways for them to understand is, I made a mistake. My teammate doesn't feel bad. Like, everyone knows it's not your fault. But your teammate telling you it's not your fault doesn't help the situation. It's, I'm going to put myself back in and show them it's okay and they can do it. And so that's a lot of what we do to help them get back on track.
Awesome, thanks. Any other questions from the audience?
I got one. Here at Oconee State Bank, I know that we put, high priority on family and high priority on margin, but it is sometimes extremely difficult to do that. I can only imagine in your roles with, on season and off season, the demands. And so we missed this in the bio, but maybe take a minute and talk a little bit about your family, just briefly. And I know both of you have had kids recently, and Joni, I believe you coached a game and then had a baby right after, if I read that correctly. So, to talk a little bit about that, and also as it relates to your family, how do you build margin into your life to spend time with them? And I know there's seasons where that's hard to do and that sort of thing, but I'd love to hear y'all's input on that.
It's funny, I ask every single person I meet that has a family what they do. Everyone deals with the same things. And I just, so how have you made it work? What have you done? I just constantly want to hear other people's opinions and what they've done because, you know, like I had Suzanne Yoglin on our team as a mentor, she had 26 years of experience. I can definitely take something from that to not make the same mistake. And so I want to do that in my parenting as well, but it's difficult. And so one of the best pieces of advice that I've gotten, it's not the amount of time you spend with your family, it's are you connected with them when you're there? You know, I was currently reading, it's a great book, Juggling Elephants, and it talks about three-ring circus. That's your life, is a three-ring circus. One area is your work, one area is your life, and one area is your self-care. How much are you doing for yourself? Because if you're not the best you, you're not going to be a very good parent. You're not going to be the greatest person in your work. And you really have to prioritize being in that moment. I realize sometimes I do things about my family and think about my family at work and do work at home. And I'm like, that's completely backward. Why would I do that? I'm on my phone when the kids are there, and I don't want them on technology all the time. And so just really being cognizant when I'm at work, get it done. If I don't get it done, sometimes I don't do it at home. I come in the next day. Because it's really important to me right now with young children. I have a 5-month, almost 6-month-old, a 2-year-old, and a 3.5-year-old. Very close together. Even this morning, my husband is a pilot. He was gone. So, mom of the morning. It's difficult. It is so difficult. And everyone's life is different, but it's difficult to be a parent. Like, be successful as a parent, be successful in your job, be successful in yourself. Those are 3 huge areas. How do you do it? You can't do everything. And like Joni was saying, she has to go home. There's not enough time in the day. What rises to the top for me? What is most important? What is most effective? And so that's actually what I'm working on right now is to make sure I am not wasting my time. I am not doing things that are unimportant, that can't wait to the next day. Somebody else could maybe help me out with that. I am not afraid to ask for help. I'm not afraid to ask for advice. And those are things that I think leaders sometimes feel like they should know it and have it all together, but you don't have to. No one person has it all together. It's everyone goes through those different experiences, and so really making sure that you're making those 3 areas of your life, your work, yourself, and your family, your relationships. It might not even be family if you don't have a family, but just your relationships. You need to have that in your life to be productive and successful in all 3 areas.
She kind of skipped around it. She got 3 kids ready and herself dressed, took them to daycare, and was here on time this morning. That deserves a round of applause. We talk all the time. It's funny. So when Courtney got the job, she was pregnant. I just had a baby, so I took a Dr. Talk downstairs, like, here, you're gonna need this. And then when I got pregnant, and she brought it back up to me, she goes, here, it's your turn again. So I think we all the time we're trying to figure it out and find out what's best. And I think going to what she said, the best advice I got was don't feel guilty. Like as a mom, like you sometimes want to carry so much guilt. Like in the role you have, you're going to miss things. You've got to be okay with that. You know, you have your perfect situation, but it's not going to look the way sometimes we were told it looked, or we read in books that it was going to look like growing up. And I think that was the biggest thing for me. You know, I'm a Southern girl from Mississippi, so it was very the white picket fence, walk-in closet, da 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 da. Like that's what you get told. And so I had to decide. When I became a head coach and had a family, I had to decide that I was going to be present when I could, but I was also going to miss things. And when I miss things, I cannot beat myself up about it because it's just going to happen in the role that I have. I think the other thing is, as I plan out my week, like this morning, I was gone and JC's my 2-year-old and I have a almost 4-month-old. I didn't see her this morning before I left. And so because of that, and this was planned on my calendar a long time ago, I made sure that my day was done by 4 so that I have more time with her in the evening. So I try to do one or the other. She goes to the McFall Center, which is right across the street from the gym. So when I can, I drive her in to daycare or I pick her up. But if I know I'm going to have a long night, I try not to have anything in my morning. So I'm there and I can take her into daycare and have breakfast with her. Or if I have an early start, then I try to finish my day early so I can at least see her in the evening. But it doesn't always happen. There's been times that I have been in town and I've gone like 3 days without seeing her. And we're under the same roof because she's asleep when I get home and she's asleep when I leave in the morning. It happens. I think the other thing is you got to have a great team around you, because there's some times where I just need to spend some time with my family, or I need to take off and do something with my family. My husband is an assistant coach for the Atlanta Dream, so he lives in Atlanta during the summer. I see him maybe once a week, and so it's a juggling act. And sometimes I've got to just pick up and go support him. He's at every game we play. He travels with us, and I've got to do the same thing for him. So on those days they have a game during the week, my office has got it, my staff has got it, and I can walk away and do that because I have a really, really great team with me. So I think it's also important, if you know that you're going to have a family, you've got to have a great team that when you step away, you know that things are going to run business as usual, and they have the same investment in your company, in your program, as you do. And that's because you've made them feel responsible and accountable, and they feel like it's on them just as much as it is on you. And then also, when I can, try to just not only my family, but when we have Thanksgiving trip or Christmas trip, or this year we're going to Italy for a foreign tour, I try to invite everyone's family on that trip. Karen's got 2 kids. Our strength and conditioning coach, we share the same strength and conditioning coach. He's got 2 kids. They all travel with us when we take big trips that way, and we try to pay for it. So just family is really important. I don't want anyone to feel like they have to choose one or the other. I want them to have both, and it's going to look a different way for everybody. And as long as we communicate that, we make it work.
That's great. Courtney, you mentioned Coach Suzanne Yoklin earlier, and obviously the success she's had, she's left a huge legacy here at Georgia. Joni, you were on Coach Lander's staff. Talk about, in both of y'all's careers, the importance of mentors and how that can carry over for us as business leaders, but then also, how do you avoid the temptation to not want to become exactly like them, take away things that they can impart and wisdom to you, but also you have your own style, you're your own person, so you can't become Coach Landers or Coach Yoklin. Talk about that balancing act of learning from them, but also being yourself.
Yeah, you said it very well, and that's exactly what you have to do. You have to make sure that you take the advice as advice, and not that you have to be exactly that. A lot of what we do, and a lot of business and sport, everything really does come together in the same way. A lot of the same characteristics, a lot of the same needs are there with people around you, trying to have a staff that feels important, trying to make sure tasks are done. I mean, a lot of things are similar. And so you take the advice from anywhere you can get it. And the best way to do it, honestly, though, is sometimes going out into a different field or a different sport and looking at how they do it. What are they doing? Because it doesn't have to be just gymnastics. You can gain so much information from a business book. Or for me, to read a business book could teach me so much. A golf coach could teach me so much. And so I think it's important. It's not just that your mentor doesn't have to be just like you are. It's nice because they have an understanding. And so having Suzanne around as a volunteer coach was great. It was great. But there are things that you have to be able to communicate. So she was a volunteer coach under me, and she was my coach for 4 years before that, and 26 years in charge of everything. So talk about managing people. That was probably the best thing I could have ever done to build myself up and be able to manage anyone. She is such a force. If she walked in this room, you would know it. You would absolutely know it. And that's what I love about it now. What a presence, what a persona. Like everything about her just screams, I love what I'm doing. I know everything, blah, blah, blah. And you just like, oh, wow, she does know everything. But you've got to remember it's what she is thinking. She thinks out loud. And it's absolutely great because you can hear and you can kind of figure out. It's amazing how much I know about her now that she probably doesn't know about herself because I've just kind of observed. And I've realized this is really good stuff. But how can I apply that to what we're doing now? Because it's not going to look the same. And being confident enough in yourself and what you're doing. Not thinking, I'm only good if I do this. And I think that's what we do with our athletes right now, because they see people in the social media, the picture. You took 100 times to get one, and you even edited it. And so now, that's what everyone's trying to be all the time, and you can't do that. You have to be you. You have to really understand. So the 3 things that I look at for myself when it comes to making decisions is in my staff is honesty, trust, and humility. And a lot of those things are just personal things I can feel comfortable with. If I know my decision is based around that, and I can feel good about it, we're going for it. this doesn't work for me that well, but I like the concept, I'll think about it, I'll put it in my back pocket. I'm not gonna necessarily use it. You have to be okay with taking the advice and not taking the advice. It's really important to be confident in who you are and what the plan is for you.
Just to go along with that, I will say your circle of trust, or your inner circle, your mentors, whatever I call it, my inner circle of trust, it needs to look different. I'm a black female. I can't have all black females as my mentors because we're going to see things the same. I need a white male, I need a white female, I need a black man. I need someone outside of basketball. And all those people on a certain issue, if it's a big enough of an issue, I might call. Coach Landers is one of those people for several reasons. Not only is he my mentor, he's one of my closest friends, but he's got institutional knowledge. He's a Hall of Fame coach. So he's my first phone call. Okay, but then after that, he's also been away from the business now for 5 years. A lot's changed in basketball in 5 years. So I've got the institutional knowledge. I've got how he handled a similar situation. Now I need to pick up the phone and call someone who maybe is currently in the business or who had a similar issue in a different sport, and how did they handle it? I think what's really neat about Jordan is that all of our head coaches get together. We try to do that once a month, and we're all pretty consistent about being there. We sit down and we have a liaison that kind of similar to this brings ideas to the table and kind of presents, and then we just share. And it's so neat. I mean, you're sitting around a table with Jack Fowlerly and Courtney and just people, Manny, and people who've been there for 36 years and the success they've had. And it's amazing what you learn and how you can grow. I think the other thing is just when you're following a legend, you've got to make it your own. You've got to make it your own, and that's a really difficult thing to do. And you can't. You've got to be secure enough in yourself to not feel that somebody's judging you or comparing you to what Suzanne did or to what Andy did or anything like that. And I think that starts with knowing who you are. And that's probably how I should have started this entire thing. You've got to know who you are first before you can lead anyone else. Because if you don't know who you are, then every time somebody comes to you with an opinion, okay, let's do it this way. Okay, then somebody else, okay, let's do it this way. Or what are your core standards or your core values? If you don't know what those are, then you just bounce around and you jump. And there's businesses that have done that. There's people that do that. And you're like, well, which path are they on today? What's their motto today? It's because they don't know who they are. So know who you are and then know what your core values are. I call them my deal breakers. What are my deal breakers? She said it was honesty, trust, and humility. For me, I call it deal breakers. And when I'm making a decision, once I know what my deal breakers are, that's how I decide if I'm moving forward with it, if I'm taking the advice that I was given, or if I'm sticking with my idea. And so it's a lot of the same things. I think we just all have different words for it, but you got to know who you are and what your core values are, and then everything just kind of goes from there.
Let's spend some time on that real quick, because core values at a County State Bank are really critical, and for any organization, knowing who you are, having a set of core values really is key to driving success, setting the standard for the company culture. Talk a little bit more about core values and why that matters, not just in athletics, but just in leadership and business.
Yeah, I think Joni pointed out a few of those points. You have to know why you're making the decision. Does it fit in with where you're going and what you want to accomplish? And so at the end of our season last year, there's 3 words I felt like we lacked a little bit and that we're pushing forward, because if we fill in those gaps of discipline, a little bit more discipline, you can always have a little bit more discipline, appreciation. There needs to be that thank you and respect. A lot of times it's thinking about my day, what I'm doing, how can I be better, and we're not thinking about the respect of others. How did I just say that, and how did it make them feel? And so a lot of times in our sport right now, it's last year we had 9 freshmen come in. That's 9 18-year-old females living in 3 different dorm rooms together on the team, experiencing new things. That comes with a lot of territory, and we knew that, and so we were getting ready for it. But it's just about, did they make that decision? Don't judge them for their decision. What's their background? Maybe that's why they made that decision. Everybody is so different, so that respect and knowing each other can really help understand why people do things, to have that trust in each other, to be honest with each other. Communication is huge. That's another really big piece that we work on as a team. We meet weekly and we talk about different aspects of it. We're gonna have to start doing activities now, because talking doesn't always work with with our team. But we're going to do activities to really help them understand these are the values. Put them in front of them, and so when they have a situation that comes in front of them, they can help make that right decision or the best decision for them. But they can respect other people for doing it, because not everyone is going to be the same. And so those values for us are some examples of ways that we try to instill that. But it's important because you never know which decision to make. You get big decisions all the time. You get daily decisions, minute decisions. You have to be quick with them to be efficient. But to do that, you have to know who you are and what you want out of everything.
I think going along with that, just we have overall themes, core values, and one of the things we always tell our ladies is where ladies become legends, right? What's your why? We talked about that a little bit earlier. And then when you're making a decision, is this a minute decision, or how is this going to affect us in the long haul? Like, Georgia basketball has been really good for 37 years, 38 years, and we've been to 33 NCAA tournaments out of 37. That's pretty incredible. You don't make quick decisions and have that type of longevity. Same thing with gymnastics. You don't win 2 national championships by not having core values and making split decisions. And so for us, it's the constant message of where you become a legend. Ladies becoming legends, and what's your why, and what story you're going to tell. How are you leaving the jersey? And so that's what we talk about. And when we look at players that we want to bring into our program, is it the right fit? Once we've identified if they're talented enough, that's pretty easy to figure out at this level. You walk in and you find Michael Jordan, and you say, yep, there it is. A lot of times my assistant coaches, well, they don't anymore, but they used to say, well, they'd send me to a game. They're like, well, let me give you her number. Nope. Because if I can't pick her out, we're not looking at the right kid. I shouldn't have to know her number to find her. I should be able to walk in the gym, and even if she's having a bad game, I should know that's her. And if I don't know that, so talent's easy. After you figure out if they're talented enough, that's when the real fun begins. That's when I want to see the transcript, and I want to find out who they are, and that's talking to the cafeteria worker and the secretary, because the coach is going to tell you great things, right? Because they want this kid to go to Georgia. You've got to talk to everyone, and so that's where the core values come in, because what we are asking them to do, what you're asking your team to do, is really hard. And I don't want anyone to be clones of each other, but we've got to come together on a few things, and it's got to be the right fit. And if it's not the right fit, again, you see programs that have a burst of 2 years that are really good and then they fall off, or a burst of 3 years that are really good and then they fall off. But teams and programs and businesses that can just consistently stay the test of time, it's because they've got core values and they're making decisions based on fit for their core values, not on talent.
That's great. Any audience questions? We've got about 10 minutes or so left before we wrap up.
I don't need a microphone. I just, y'all are women, so you both have followed legends.
Hey, Billy, we need it for the audio.
You both are women, and you both have followed legends, so I kind of see y'all like the head of the bank, and then management is the athletic association, and people coming to the games are our customers. So you've got to be flexible. So did you have any issues dealing with management to want to do things your way because you did follow legends? Do you understand what I'm saying? Or was it fairly easy?
It's fairly easy. That's the beauty of the University of Georgia and our administration, is once they hire you, they believe in you. And it's like, here, it's yours. An example, when I got pregnant with my first child, JC, Dr. Carla Williams was my oversight, and she was the Deputy Director of Athletics. She's now the AD at Virginia. And I walked in, I was due in November, and I walked in August with like a 10-page document of our plan for when I was going to be out, and what we were going to do, and the practice calendar. And I spent so much time working on this because I wanted her to know that we had a plan, and this is what we were going to do. So I walked in to hand it to her, and she was like, I don't need that. And I was like thinking to myself, you're going to take this, because I spent all and I was like, but I said, huh? She was like, we don't need that. She was like, Greg and I would not have hired you if we needed to get something like that. Well, you have a plan in place. Go do what you need to do. That is how I can sum up our administration at the University of Georgia. they're not going to hire you if they have to micromanage you. And if you come to them with a change or another idea, then they know that you've thought it out, that you've researched it. It's never, well, tell me why or this or that. It's, okay, obviously, we're a brand, the University of Georgia, so you just can't go out on your own and have different fonts and there's little things that we all want to make sure look the same, but there's never been an issue of anything like that. And I think that really speaks to our administration. And I will say, just from having the opportunity to work at LSU and to work at Alabama, even as an assistant, and I'm not saying those two schools in particular, but I've worked at 5 different universities, and that is not always the case. And so it is really, really a great thing.
That's great. Any other questions?
I've got one. I got a lot of questions, but here, we got a mic. You touched on talent, and we're big believers here at Oklahoma State Bank on recruiting top talent, but you're right, it has to fit within the culture and a lot of other things. But there's also every other school in the country looking for talent, and just like every other bank, around is looking for the same talent we are and trying to improve upon it. What makes a great recruiter? What are some characteristics that you all use to set yourself apart to win over other institutions as you're looking for athletes?
The one thing for Georgia, for gymnastics at Georgia, we have a great product, and I believe 100% in the product. And so we're lucky in that fact at Georgia. We have a great academics, we have great facilities, we have a great program. And so I believe, I'm not a salesperson. My dad's in sales, and I'm always like rolling my eyes at it. I'm like, okay, Dad. And I never saw myself as that until I became a coach and realized it's not about selling, it's about what you believe in. And so I believe 100% in our program and what we're doing. And I think that comes across. Your passion and what you're saying, it's not necessarily the words, but it's how you're saying it. It's what you believe, and it's what you're projecting. It makes all the difference in the world. For especially me right now, I have 2 years. This is my 2nd year. I don't have much to talk about in terms of, we've done this for this long, this is how much. Yes, Georgia has gotten that many championships, but how many have we gotten? We don't have any yet. That first one is going to be everything, and I keep telling everybody, we are going to get them. Come be a part of it.
You're close.
Yes, we are, but it's about just believing in what you're doing and the product you have. You have to believe in it, or you're not going to get anybody.
So I'll start where she stopped. That is the first thing. And if you are not with the program or organization that you believe in, you got to go, right? So that's the first part. Then what happens when you're competing against a bank or another program that's got the same thing you do? Then what happens? We're both recruiting young women. It's relationship. Good recruiters are great at relationships, and that requires a lot of time. You better know the mom, the dad, the grandmother, the little brother, the dog's name. I'm serious, because sometimes for a young girl, you don't know what's going to make the difference. She remembered my birthday and this one didn't. They are a Nike school and this school is Under Armour. It could be anything. Seriously, I'm serious. But when you line up with someone, we call it 80 to 120, right? Most people operate at 80, and 80 is enough. But every once in a while you get to 120, or you run into somebody who's 120. And so what we tell our ladies is, what happens when 80 meets 120? 120 is going to kick your butt. That doesn't happen often, but it happens when Duke, North Carolina play basketball, right? That's 120 and 120. And that's when adrenaline kicks in and you have a great game that becomes the instant classic. So we talk about operating at 120. And then the same thing in recruiting. When 120 meets 120, what's going to be the separator? And it's the relationship. And that takes time. That takes consistency. That takes resilience. We recruit these kids starting in like 7th, 8th, 9th grade. It is a 2-3 year process. And when we lose a kid, I feel like it's a breakup. Like, I'm serious, because you've talked to them and you've recruited their families for so long. And so it starts with what Courtney talked about, and then when you are even, it's got to be the relationship piece that takes it over the top. And that's where I think we separate ourselves.
I think we have time for maybe one more audience question and then we'll wrap up.
Let me make a comment. I don't want to put it on the spot, but we have a former gym dog in the house over here. Martha, raise your hand. Do you have a question?
I'm enjoying.
Okay. I talked to her husband. I told her that Courtney was coming. She said, I'm sure Martha will move heaven and earth to be here. So we sat with her at a lot of meetings, but I'll turn it over if there's any other questions.
It was like, no, one more.
Well, I just think it's so interesting that every year y'all have a new crowd coming in, and every year you have, the seniors moving out. So you're just constantly new crowd coming and the seniors leaving, and how you manage that year after year after year.
I think what you have to understand is that every team is different. And I think our team learned that this past season. So 2 years ago, we're coming off a 24-7 win. We hosted at home. We only lost 3 kids, 2 starters, and 1 starter who was a really, really good player that got drafted. And so I think last year's team thought, we have everybody back. We're the same team. And we kept saying, no, we are not. Every team's different. It's going to have a different feel. I think as coaches, you figure that out, but sometimes your players don't. And so it's about, from the very beginning, telling them this team is totally different than last year. You cannot compare yourself to last year's team. You're not going to be like last year's team. And it's just pointing out and trying to help them find ways that they can lead or take on a role that maybe a senior had that that's a gap that we're missing, and show it to them on paper. Another thing we really try to do is with YouTube and with everything on the internet, there's so many motivational videos you can find, or Bill Belichick's got all kind of stuff on the Patriots online that we show our kids all the time. Just those little nuggets about team and how it's different and what's your role and how you can do that. And so we try really, really hard to make them understand that it's different. And where it really, the class that really doesn't realize it is the freshmen that are about to be sophomores. And for us, that freshman class 2 years ago, were really, really pivotal in the run we had. And so we tried to tell them, okay, as a sophomore, like, you're in the car, but now you're driving the car. And riding in the car and driving the car is different. And they thought they had it figured out because they were in the car last year. They thought they were driving it, but they weren't. And so I think you're absolutely right. It's a lot to manage, but we get on top of it as soon as the season is over. And sometimes they believe it and they listen, and sometimes they don't. And last year's team didn't really believe it until it was too late. And then we were up and down, and they tried to figure it out. But at that point, your work's got to be done in the summer. And at that point, when we realized, or they realized that, oh crap, we are different, we're halfway into our season.
That's half the fun, though. It's a different team every single year. She's right on with all of those points. And so what I like is you get to constantly refine it. What worked, what didn't? Where are we going to go? But making sure that the team knows it's going to be different. Making sure you're communicating clearly to every single member, but also the team as a whole, because it's going to be different. It's going to look different every year. And so sometimes you can get in that rut of doing the same thing all the time, like she said. And so it's important for us to communicate. Tell them things they might be thinking, but they don't know they're thinking. And so constant communication and being so clear is huge when you have kids coming in and kids leaving, kids coming in and kids leaving. It's just a constant recycle of everything. But we try, that's why she's right, it all happens right before season, but it's also those core qualities, going back to those core values. That's always what you're trying to instill in them right when they get there, and you're trying to grow it every single year. If they're staying the same from year to year, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. We look at it as an athlete as a whole, and not just necessarily the team or the win. It's growing them to be able to get out on their own, get a job, do what they need to do, and that takes time. But it's what helps the team stay a unit. It helps them by growing and seeing people change. And so it's really important that they understand it's going to be different. They need to keep learning every single year. But they do the same gymnastics every year. So it's different for us sometimes. They do the same gymnastics. The team changes a little bit. That dynamic might change a little bit. The events they do might be different. That's a big one for us. Every year with new kids coming in and some leaving, they might not be doing all 4 events like they did last year. They have to be able to adapt. But they need to understand why they're adapting. They need to understand, well, why is she coming in now? And so we do a ranking board every fall. We try to make sure it's so clear they know every week who is the top 6 on that event every week. So it's not like all of a sudden we start season, wait, I thought I was number 6. I thought I was competing. Clarity and just information. The more information we can tell them, we try not to keep anything back from them. Because if we think they know it, they probably don't. And so we have to constantly tell them. And that's what's tricky every year. Oh, I told them last year, but you gotta say it again. We constantly have to make sure we say the information all the time. And you hear it 4 years, it's finally gonna sink in. And that's one thing that Georgia Gymnastics has done so well, and what during my time is every alumni that comes back, they've had the same experience. They have the same qualities inside. And that's what's so great about seeing those alumni come back, is that's what you're doing constantly. But it is a different team every year. You never know. You think you know everything, you don't know everything.
I'll say too, she talked about communication. It is also important to communicate with anybody that's going to touch your program. Support staff, the trainer, anybody that's going to touch your business or your program. Every year you've got to make sure that if your message is the same, if your message is different, because if they're going to be talking to your student athletes, they've got to be speaking the same language you are. So they need the same reminders, they need the same tweaks. This is going to be a little different, and it's important that anybody that's touching your business or your program has the same message you have to.
That's great. Oh, yeah,
A
go ahead.
little lighthearted question, can y'all still get out there and show them how it's done?
Yeah, last time I did that, I tore my Achilles.
Last time I did, I had a Lisfrango fracture and had 2 screws put in my foot. So yes, no, I don't do that.
I run with them still. I still run with them, but I do not play basketball with them anymore. Yeah.
Well, and Courtney, tell me, we were talking about this earlier. You were saying, like, the prime for a lady gymnast is 16 probably?
Around 15 to 18 years old.
So by the time they're getting into your program, they're already starting to kind of be on the back end of
Which
it.
we always, and there's some that are different and some that will continue growing, but we try to really tell them, you've done maybe all your skills, but we need to make those skills better. So they can refine a little bit more, but they hit their peak in their level of gymnastics, probably around 15, which is really young for a sport.
Yeah.
Just a comment before Kevin wraps it up. I would encourage all of you to come out and support both of these teams. We always pack out football stadium, obviously, but come support gymnastics, come support women's basketball. I've tried to make it a priority to go to both. It's fun, it's exciting, and I'm sure the athletes feed on the crowd and the vibe there, and the lights and the flashing lights towards the end of the game. I mean, all that's it's just really cool when you pack out the stag on the meets and the basketball game. So I encourage all of you to be a part of that. Even Florida State fans are welcome, Mike. You look good in red and black. That's awesome. So anyway, Caleb, anything you want to say to close out?
Thank you guys, Joni and Courtney, for being here. We really enjoyed the conversations and just learning from you guys, and we're really looking forward to supporting y'all in the 2019-2020 season.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.